I now request today's chief guest, Mr. Vinod Bidwaik, sir, to address the audience.
Namaskar. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
So after the inspiring session by guest of honor, Mr. Fali ma'am, it is a little bit bringing you in the reality of the management, and I would like to cover some trends and the skill set, what is my learning over a period of time while working in big Indian and multinational companies. Director ma'am, Dr. Vinod Shastri, Ms. Kulkarni, it is my great pleasure to be here. I am coming here, I think, second time in this institute, and always, I like to interact with the students specifically when they would like to learn more. I think the topic, the conference is organized on advances in management, Vision 2025, I think it's 3 years what will be there. We need to understand further what's happening around the world, and perhaps you have the access of all these things today. But let me explain you 4 things which are actually impacting our life very well. And it is very important to have the balance. Management of the business or management of the homes or management of anything is required, the balance between common sense and innovation. Because sometimes you will be forced to unnecessarily create and spend your time which sometimes doesn't require that much. And that's why common sense comes into the picture. And this common sense is nowadays very uncommon because of the lot of access to the social media, and I think the narratives which are created by different people around the world. But let's discuss what's happening in the global trends. So we need to understand 4 factors. One is global trends. You already know that the Russia-Ukraine war, the what's happening around the world, the recession which actually Western world is facing, and fortunately India is in a greater position because of the strong leadership what we have in India nowadays. I can give the example. I used to travel globally, and I think when I joined one multinational company in 2009, I got the opportunity to travel Europe, and the treatment given on the airport was totally different. I think the Indians are coming in the Western world, so they have a different perception about India. And that time they still had the perception that Indian, still there are elephants and snakes around the road, and that sort of perception. Even the Singapore is hardly, the travel at Singapore is 3-4 hours, but still the mindset in Singaporeans is that India is a very unstable country and all these things. 3 years back I traveled again in the same country, and the respect what I saw, it was totally different. India is becoming a powerhouse, and India has their own advantage. I will say one of the advantages where we are resistant to the recession, because the world is going to a dip in recession and they are facing. The India has the zero probability of having the recession because of our population, the young talent in the country, the English speaking talent specifically is in the country, and the Western world's perception about China and neighboring countries. And that is also the benefit for us. So the global trends is not good in terms of the global companies and global Western world perhaps, but India, we are doing good, and I am sure that by 2025 we will be the superpower coming forward. And that becomes, that has more responsibilities on us to have the technology. And I think I don't need to tell about Chat GPT and OpenAI and all these things. Everybody is using that, and I don't know whether you are preparing to ban this chat, GPT, all these things for the research and all these things. You can write book. Exactly. And Italy, I think they already banned this in the universities. The chat GPT or OpenAI test at version 5, there are a lot of agitation going on, and the top influencers are saying that we should not do. Let's go to the reality. India is, still is a big country, but we have a bigger problem of unemployability. The colleges, institute, and we were discussing in the morning, we are creating a lot of graduates, either in engineering or either in management or either in commerce and all these streams, but the employability is a bigger issue. What you learn in the colleges and universities, the organizations has to still invest additional 3-4 years on the students. And of course, the student may have a lot of expectations from the organization. That is becoming a little bit challenging situation for the organizations to survive. The management itself is becoming difficult in terms of those challenges. And technology, I'm sure that there are certain jobs which will be made redundant. Content creators, and specifically where you don't need to apply the mind. Those jobs are becoming. So we need to understand how to live with the technology. And there are always a debate a few years back, and this is very fast. You remember the industrial revolution, first, second and third and fourth. You must be knowing that pager. I don't know how many people know the pager, but they were actually disappeared within 1 year, and then cell phones came. I remember that the charges of the cell phone calling were around 80 rupees per minute for their definition. Now it is free. So knowledge is fingertip. Knowledge is the power. But what you are consuming is really knowledge or it's just information. So technology has to be used to convert that information, to convert that data into the knowledge. And then I will say that knowledge which will help you to empower yourself to take the better decision in your life. Either you are the manager or either you are using in their personal life. This also has the impact on workplace and workspaces. The recent industrial, there are different labor laws which actually government is consolidating and giving the freedom to the organizations to manage their businesses. And one of the things is gig economy, which will have the major impact and that is relevant nowadays because consultant, there are experts. The blue collar gig economy is popular in India, like this Uber, Ola and all these things, Zomato, but white collar gig economy is going to play a major role and we actually need to prepare. And you as a student also come out from that mindset that is a full-time equivalent jobs, permanent jobs, all these things. Because you are thinking a long-term perspective, you don't need to think about the jobs, but also the career. So that is very important to understand. The aging population is a major challenge globally. In India, of course, the average age is 35 years, I think, in India. But depending upon what the research says, the health and wellness industry is becoming very popular. Digital transformation is embedded in our life. Gig economy, I spoke. Social media is taking the control of our lives, and we need to understand that what exactly we are doing with the social media. By 2029, one of the research and some popular influencers say that social media will not be that much popular going forward because still print and all these things is very important because you see the smell and essence of the book rather than just reading those books on the Kindle and on the mobile phones. Extreme polarization is happening around the world. Social polarization, political polarization, so even regional polarization, extreme regionalization is impacting the jobs and impacting the way of working, what we are doing as business leaders. Sustainability and climate actions, there are NGOs who are becoming more active in terms of, and sometimes it is good, sometimes it is too bad because again the definition, what is the development we need to understand, how we can actually have a sustainable development, and that needs to be understood, because the organizations are speaking about sustainability, and sometimes it is a, I will say, the paradoxic that the organization themselves, specifically the multinational organizations, are speaking the sustainability point of view, reduction of carbon footprint, and thinking about the people, planet, and of course the ethical way of the business. For organizing those workshops and seminars, they travel by first class. So that is again a hypocrisy what the major organizations are going through. So you need to understand that what exactly the right and wrong in terms of instant feedback and reviews are actually ruining the culture of the organization, of the society, and sometimes it is a detrimental to the health of the organization. You see what happened a few years back with the product, where the customers give the instant feedback and then their ratings may go down and have the impact on the businesses. So it is, we learned the terminology a few years back where consultant always speak about VUCA, where you must have heard from your professors about vulnerability and uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity. But now the world is becoming more on a linear way, in a what they call today is a bani, which means is brittle, is a fragile and all these things. You don't know what will happen tomorrow. Non-linear, there are complex and interconnected and unpredictable relations between the people, between the relationship, between the organizations, between the way you are working in a different people, and it's very difficult to understand. Now, what are those management practice we need to understand going forward is about, and we all know principle and practices of management must be one subject, right? Now still it is there. I think it was in 1997 I read, and still that the same subject, the same way we are learning. And typical function is planning, organizing, directing, controlling and monitoring. But we need to think, and nobody will tell you that. From planning, we need to go to the scenario planning. How we can think differently in different scenarios in the organizations and do the business. I will give the example of media company where I am working. We are into media and non-media. So one of the media perhaps be aware about Sakar Media Group. We are into print, television, digital and all these things. And non-media is about technology companies where we have applications, development, skilling, reskilling, education and all these things, social impact. Now, after COVID, print media is dying. Everybody was studying that, print media, and definitely print media is now stabilizing. But we need to find out, because print media has still the credibility. That credibility perhaps the digital media doesn't have, or the television doesn't have, because the war of the breaking news and all these things. The credibility is the major challenge, and print media still carries that credibility. So how we can use that credibility to ensure that we have a complementary and have the positive impact in the life of the people and the society. And we have to run up different scenarios. During the COVID, I was the chairman of crisis management committee of the organization, and then we come up with the scenarios that how we can actually take care of the business irrespective of the business going down because of the COVID. Organization always means that in a stability. Organizing means stability. Organizing means bringing the stability. But now we have to think that reorganization and redesigning always is the way. Every 1 year, 2 years, we need to redesign, redevelop the organization. So organizational development, it doesn't mean that you have to bring the stability in the organization, but in fact to make the organization more unstable so that the inefficiencies in the organization has to be taken care of. It also means that putting the people, putting the customer in the center and design your processes around that, rather than designing the digitalization is one of the buzzwords most of the organizations are doing today, digitalization for the sake of digitalization. But sometimes you don't need that digitalization in the organization. It's the scalability is very important. And sometimes it's like a IVRS system in the banking system. They did a digitalization and automation. It's painful, right? When you want to call any customer care department of the banks, it is really painful. You really don't want to do that. Edaba, Udaba, all these things. versus bigger challenges. So they are not put the customer in the center going forward. Directing is becoming more purposeful driven organizations. How actually we align with our society or the people to the purpose. Controlling is becoming more empowering and monitoring becoming more agile and adaptive management. So modern management is like a, the role of the CEOs, role of the business leaders, role of the managers, and the future leaders is like a conductor of the orchestra who is leading on orchestra, not like controlling the organization, but also taking the role of facilitator in the organization. I have seen one of the visiting card in Dubai where the CEO of that company wrote as a chief conductor of the company. I was curious to ask. So he said, my job is not CEO controlling. My job is facilitating the organization and actually guiding the team how to run the orchestra. This needs totally different competencies. Now you are a management organization and perhaps the institutes is putting a lot of efforts on the student to groom them. I'm sorry to say that, but most of the time the organization, the institutes are becoming more grooming institute rather than putting the more knowledge-based education system in the organization. The differentiator needs to be done. Because you are here in the college, perhaps the student from different colleges will have the same thing. There will be tier 1, tier 2. How we can differentiate in the organization. And the skills and competencies, perhaps what you write on a resume or biodata, everybody has that. Leadership, communication. It's not like the old age where communication was difficult. We came from a vernacular schools where we are educated in the Marathi languages and learning for the English itself was a big challenge. But for you, it is more advantage. You already have a great language skill, communication skill, I will say. But even leadership, you get a lot of opportunities for the visibility and exposure in the, specifically in urban areas, not in rural still. But there are different skills we need to think about, and this is my learning over a period of time. Is like cognitive load management. How we can manage and optimize the information coming from the different sources and not give too much stress to the mind. Sometimes we need to automate that, but it is very important to understand what sort of stress we need to give to the brain. So it is very important to understand about the cognitive load management to the brains and understanding what is right information and wrong information and what information we need to use in day-to-day life. Social media literacy, of course, because the organization itself are using social media to brand their product, and even the selling is happening through the social media like Twitter and Insta and all these things. They are generating a lead. LinkedIn is the largest CRM where they are generating lead in the business, and that where every organization is looking in their management student to have that social media literacy, not for giving the information what you have, but understanding how the algorithms work in the social media. Social, cultural, emotional intelligence is very important. Complex organizations we are working in, there are a lot of things happening around. We are good friend on the shop floor in the organization, but when we read some news, we become enemies and we have extreme views. And that's why it is very important to have that intelligence, that what the perception we are building around the world and how we can actually work on those perception biases, the different type of biases, how we can actually take a view. And similarly in specifically in women, diversity and inclusion, most of the organizations are speaking about that. But it is only related to the conferences and all these things. Still there are a lot to weigh because of the biases what the organizations may have in their mind. Data literacy, of course, I spoke, there is a lot of data, a lot of information. How you convert that information into the right data, right knowledge, and then that knowledge into the wisdom. The Peter Senge hierarchy of data is very important. But also predictive analysis is way forward. But we need to understand in at least what the data we are using and is the data is right. Data can be presented in two ways. If I want to say something, I can present positively. You may feel that it is totally negative. So data is actually not necessarily the facts. So from data we need to come up with the fact. This happens normally in most of the businesses. Sales making. With this all happening around the world, what does, how we can make the sense from that news or that information. Novel and adaptive thinking, transdisciplinary. I would like to say that you are doing some course which may be about your education, that you may be the marketing expert, you may be the HR expert, or you may be the finance expert. Find out some other alternate curriculum for you also. Because in the life, everybody should have at least 2-3 alternate careers. And how brain works, it's called as a neuroplasty, where you try something differently. It can be reading book, it can be traveling traveling to unknown places. It can be doing something differently. In fact, if you are doing something different, your way of working in a certain matter, can you change that? Because we create habits, and if you change those habits, it definitely work on the brain. So we need to learn a different skill. So don't go only for the one skill set as such. Right? You find out, you may be, it's called as a T-shaped learning, that you can be expert in one area, but you find out other areas also where you can be more expert. And then career is not actually the, it is not a destination itself. It is a journey. Over a period of time, you may realize that what you are working, you are earning for some, because for earning you may do the job, but for living you need something different. And sometimes if you find out that passion of living, and that also gives the money, is very important, because then you may find your alternate career maybe after 50s, after 40s, whatsoever you learn over a period of time. And there are people who are doing that. So everybody should have at least 2 alternate careers, which I think, for me, I will give the example, I was a sales professional, then I become a management professional, and then become a HR professional. And I don't intend to be in a HR professional for long, whereas after 2-3 years, I will change totally different things and do something totally different. So in totality, we need to work that how we can create the purposeful organization. It can be organization means I am using a holistically. It's not necessarily the business organizations, but your circles, your friends, societies, families. How we can use that purposeful organization, and then imbibe those things. Very important things. I will conclude by giving 4 things we need to always work. Personal development and social development, you will learn this through the colleges and your career. But 2 things is very important to learn on your own, and you have to find out the options to learn how you can do that. So personal and social is very important. Of course, that will give you the career and the earnings what you intend to. But there are other 2 things, which is intellectual development, emotional development, and third is spiritual development. How you are finding this, because that will definitely help to live a better life in in your career. I wish you all the best, and thanks a lot for listening to me.
Thank you, sir, for giving us a reality check about the facts around